Ravi here, along with the brothers Krishna and Arjuna. Do you like creepy shit? Because we got your fix with a look at this week's Lovecraft episode. Do you like funny shit? Star Trek Lower Decks has you covered. Do you like me? Please say yes. Krishna, this is by far your most mediocre
What?
intro
I think it's my best.
ever.
It's to the point. It was succinct. It was attention grabbing.
It's true.
It was short and sweet.
To the point.
We can get right into it.
Yeah, we can. Guys, bros.
Bros before hoes.
Oh, wow. Brothers, we are talking Lovecraft Country, episode 5, the goriest episode.
Wow. Fuck me.
Yeah, basically. This episode was by far, I think, two things stuck out. It was the goriest, and it was the most visually. It's probably the best visual effects I've seen to date.
Let me throw out a question.
Sure.
And you know I'm all about the hyperbole.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm all about, this is the greatest quesadilla I've ever had.
Sure.
Yes. And then 1 week later, I'll say the exact same thing.
Yes.
Right? I'm a very much live in the present moment.
That's good. That's healthy, they say.
Maybe. We'll see. Is this the most shocking thing you've ever seen on television? Now, I'm not talking about movies, but in terms of a fictional television show, is this episode the most shocking thing you've ever seen? Because for me, and of course it's recency bias, but I think I have to say yes. I don't think I've ever seen anything more shocking.
I'm going to say... Well, I guess we have to break down shocking. Are we talking shocking in terms of gory?
Just to you.
Or the psychology? Or
Just whatever you latch onto.
Sure.
To me it is, because it hit both of those things. The special effects were some of the best I've ever seen on television. And the weird stuff that was happening, and we'll get into it obviously, spoiler alert, was some of the weirdest shit I've ever seen on television.
Well, it's funny, real quick, before you say some of the best visual effects, because I agree, the whole metamorphosis stuff was visually incredible, but it also had one of the worst visual effects in the dream sequence with Tick, where the house is on fire.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And that fire, I said it.
I was like, After Effects.
This might be hyperbolic, but it's like Pinnacle 8, the fires that you see in a Lego movie type of.
You know why I loved it? Because it was a dream, and I love that. I love that it looked so fake because it was a dream. And when all of the shit that was happening in real life, I was like,
well, I mean, what happened was, production-wise, they didn't obviously shoot that scene when they did 2, so they had to recreate the set virtually, and that's why it looked the way it did.
Or it was a creative choice.
Because I was like, wait a second, this fire burning did not look this bad in episode 2.
I think what Arjuna or what Krishna said, where it's a dream sequence. So I'm going to pretend like it was a creative choice.
Yeah.
But to answer Krishna's original question of was this the most shocking
on television?
On television, I'm going to say no.
Okay.
What
would you put above it though?
Yeah, the most shocking thing I've ever witnessed in my. Can we call it a career? No.
Yeah.
In my time of watching television is still by far the end of season 1, Game of Thrones ending of the first season. That ending where Ned Stark's head gets cut off is still super shocking to me, because when I watched Game of Thrones,
You didn't know.
I didn't know anything. I knew nothing about the books,
Yeah.
and I had been raised on television and story that was done in a more traditional sense, where the main characters, the good guys, they always come out on top.
Yeah.
So to see such a good character, air quotes here,
The best character.
get
morally
his head chopped off.
Yeah.
In the first season, that was still by far I will always remember that as the most shocking thing. And then I would say the second most shocking thing, and this is more just because I'm a sci-fi nerd, is when Daniel Jackson dies in Stargate.
Season 6? Season 5?
Season 5 or 6, where he ascends.
Oh my
that was the other part where I was like, because I was also much younger, right? And I was very into Stargate.
So
I still am very into Stargate, but I remember sitting there and be like, but he's one of the main characters. You can't do this.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I was shocked as in surprised by what happened.
Well, yeah, I meant more of a visceral shock.
But in terms of gore, right?
Yeah.
I think that's where you're going with gore on TV. I'll take another Game of Thrones episode. It is the end of season 4, or episode 9, season 4, where Pedro Pascal's character's head explodes. That to me is still probably the grossest because like
it's
you see his
gross,
head explode.
but it lasts 5 seconds. This episode had long,
yeah, but that's
intense shots.
I know.
Of some of the best special effects. I've ever seen.
I know, but that
Also-
to me is
Also,
still
when
shocking.
she takes her shoe and just
Rams it up his asshole.
runs up his ass over and
Well,
over
she
again.
starts ramming it up his ass, and then she starts moving on to the fatty butt cheeks. I don't know if you noticed that.
Yeah.
So it's just a gigantic, bloody mess
Yeah.
of pain.
I'm just saying. I'm going to put it above both of those in terms of visceral. Like,
And then
I'm like, I'm grossed out.
Well, so one of the other things that really grossed me out, and this is probably because I was a kid, is Shaun of the Dead. It's a movie. Shaun of the Dead. When they're in the this is the climax of the movie, and this to me is still one of the grossest things. Like I still can't watch it. Is when the glasses friend who's jealous of Sean gets pulled out and ripped
that's
to
right.
pieces.
That's
And I
right.
was this came out in 2006, and I was like 14. And I was a pretty squeamish kid. That to me, like as I didn't know it was coming, then you just see like his guts, his head gets pulled off. I was like, no, like that's still disgusting.
Oh, that's great.
So that.
But
that's up
to
there.
Christian's point, like
That's
we,
a movie.
we
Yeah,
I said
I know.
we bring up like all these gory things that we've witnessed over the years, and we've seen these things, throughout our throughout our childhood into young adult to adulthood.
Yeah.
And to your point, it was still pretty visually like, whoa, this is definitely kind of gross.
Intense.
But it was, Lovecraft, I think, has shown us things right off the bat where we saw, we've seen shows that discuss racism, and you see certain things. You see groups being put down by other groups. We've seen films about the Holocaust. We've seen films about racism. We've seen TV shows, all that stuff. This show still keeps taking everything you've seen and making it not seem visually or story-wise as bad as what you're seeing in Lovecraft, right? It keeps pushing that horrific edge to it.
Yeah.
Whether it be the racism, wherever it be the gore and like these monsters and these creatures, it keeps pushing that envelope. And I thought probably like episode 2 or 3, like after we'd seen everything visually, gore, racism, I thought, oh, it can't get much worse. Like in terms of like making you feel a little sick. They somehow keep pushing
they
the
did it.
envelope.
They did it.
And we still have 5 more
Yeah.
episodes.
Makes me nervous for the rest.
Now I understand why episode 4 had so quote unquote lighthearted and funny. It was the
You needed it.
It's the high before the low,
Quote
essentially.
unquote.
Yeah.
But actually, there were some comedic parts in this one
Oh,
too,
yeah.
especially
Yeah.
with I think Ruby was clearly the central focus of the A plot, if you will, of the episode, and having her experiences as a white woman, Hillary, I believe is what she called herself.
Real quick, her white character, isn't she doesn't that look like the woman from episode 1?
It is.
It
Episode
is.
2.
Or
The woman with the guard dogs that
Yeah.
they kind of knocked over, maybe killed. I want to talk about the metamorphosis in a bit. But yeah, definitely the same character there. But it was definitely comedic to see her kind of interact in the department store as an assistant manager, try to like wear the white skin, but obviously still being a black woman underneath. Did create some humorous and also very sad, instances throughout the episode.
Well, I think let's dive into Ruby because she was definitely, I think, the more interesting and a more heavily focused character and storyline this episode. Right off the bat, we got the big reveal that once we discussed it really on the podcast last week, I think it was kind of obvious that Christina is William, same person. They go through a metamorphosis. I mean, the nail in the head before the actual sequence was probably where Christina was talking to Ruby, and Ruby says, as a white woman, you just don't get it. I see how you all act. And it's very clear that Christina obviously feels some type of way in terms of this society where, yes, African Americans are clearly not treated equally. Women at that time period were also still not treated equally either. So her being a white male makes sense in order to get what she needs done. So, but yeah, metamorphosis. I mean, this entire episode was kind of about identity crisis.
Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
In terms of Ruby having the ability to be a white female if she wanted to. Montrose, right? Also,
Yep. I mean, he had the big identity reveal, and then
Yep.
even like Tick and Letty, or like Tick especially, like goes off and almost kills his dad at the very beginning of the episode. And he sort of has an identity crisis, and Letty does too, because she thinks she knows Tick,
Yeah.
and she's frightened by this man, this anger, and this
Yeah.
this completely different person you see at the beginning of the episode. So I think you just hit the nail on the head that the whole episode is definitely about identity and who you are. And I think some characters kind of embrace who they are by the end of the episode, and some still continue to pretend. And I think that's what's interesting about this show. That they have themes, and there's the very physical part of it, right, with the gross out metamorphosis, but there's also the inner struggles of who are you and who are you pretending to be, whether that is through magic or literally.
Yeah.
And so I think it creates an interesting discussion. I think, like, from the magic standpoint, at least I think, especially with a show like this, these aren't the only two characters who aren't who they appear to be. I think there is more to, who else isn't who they necessarily appear to be.
and actually, let's jump in on that, because the police chief obviously plays an important role. He owns this lodge that it sounds like used to be, quote, Williams.
Yes. So from dialogue, and basically from Ruby also being a character we've seen before, they can only transform, I would assume, into people that are real. So the way that Christina described William, he was a real person who she was close with. The chief did shoot him, and he did die, right? Remember, she has a conversation of like, yeah, he shot him in the back, and she thought he died, but I brought him back.
Yep.
The way she brought him back was by being able to transform into his skin, literally. So that makes me think that the woman that Ruby is turning into, Hillary, who we saw earlier, is probably dead, I would assume, and that's how she's transforming into her. So could we see other characters? Could we see Tick transform into Uncle George? Could we see Christina transform into her dad, right? The Grand Master Wizard himself. Or characters already done that. We know Montrose has more than we, done more than we know. Is that actually Montrose? Right? That could
Or is it somebody else?
Could it be somebody else?
That's very true.
Montrose, the
It's
real Montrose
interesting.
might be dead.
Right.
Yep.
But going back to what you're saying with the police chief, he certainly there was a shot that he had his shirt off and he had the darker skinned torso.
Yeah.
And you could see kind of the sew lines there, and I assume that's from the doctor, from episode 2.
Yeah.
Or episode 3,
yeah.
where they bought the house, the one who was doing all the experiments. He must have been part of those experiments.
Or do you think maybe he got stuck in between,
Right, you don't know.
like a metamorphosis thing that the police chief is stuck halfway through?
Maybe.
And then speaking on the police chief, obviously we know that Ruby goes into this lodge to drop what I imagine is some kind of listening device, the rock thing. Cool, magic. But obviously she has to hide in a closet with a guy whose neck, I believe, is somewhat slit.
Yeah.
And
He's bleeding out.
He's bleeding out. What's the what do we think is the purpose of that guy? Are they using his blood for something? Or is he in trouble?
I don't think it's necessarily
Sadistic shit.
Yeah, I think it's just to show that the captain is
A sadistic
sadistic
motherfucker.
as fuck, right? And he's clearly like knows of the order, but he's not even like he's too sadistic to even get into the order, right? So he does some weird stuff. Because remember,
That's like, think about that for a second. You have a bunch of wizards who are racist, and they have their order, but there's some guy who they themselves think is too sick and
Yeah.
fucked up to be in their own order.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh boy.
yeah,
Okay.
it's setting up, I think, a longer mystery for this season, and maybe potentially for further seasons down the road. In terms of,
We still don't know if there's another season coming.
we don't know. No.
Yeah.
We don't know if this is self-contained or.
I get the impression it's going to be self-contained.
I like
That's the feeling I get.
kind of like Watchmen. I want it to be self-contained
Yes,
because
absolutely.
I like these small little
too.
these smaller stories. Going back to Ruby and her metamorphosis, so obviously she takes on this role of Hillary. She becomes assistant manager at the department store. She obviously goes and discusses quite a bit with the African American employee that's working there. Also, like tells her, all these fun things. What do we think about her role there in terms of playing that character, going through, living the life that she wants, and all of that fun stuff, and then at the very end, she brings it all down essentially, quite literally.
I mean, it's a great vehicle. I think that story, that whole plot, is a great vehicle to explore the power of this metamorphosis. I'm not sure that's going to play a bigger role for anything else in the season, but that role, the whole department store plot line, is a perfect vehicle for her to explore this power that she's been given, to see the limitations of what that power is, like how long she can last in it. If she doesn't take that potion, exactly what happens.
Right.
Her old self breaking through. And so kind of like a lot of other elements in this season, it just shows, it sort of creates the world, the world building setting of the racism, the segregation, sort of, and it's interesting. It's interesting because the manager says that it comes down on a corporate level, right? That they had to get representation.
Right.
That's why the African American worker was hired, right? So that's an interesting nugget. I'm not sure if that's going to play. It's important. It's going to play a role, but that's a good piece of, like, at least on a corporate level, things were starting to change. And it takes a lot longer, obviously, for individuals to accept those changes. But I think it's great development for Ruby. Great plot for showing the metamorphosis. I just don't think it's going to have too much bearing on anything else that happens in the season.
Yeah, I agree with what you said in terms of, I think this episode was certainly like Ruby's episode to shine. She was certainly a character who hadn't yet been introduced to the magical elements, I would say.
Actually, it's so funny you say that,
Yeah.
because we're watching with Michael Learman, a great friend of the podcast, and he said, oh man, like, she's pretty much like the Muggle of the show.
Right.
And then 2 minutes later,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, pretty much. I mean, they needed to introduce her, or you would assume because she'd been featured so much that she was going to get pulled into this world somehow. But it's interesting. She's obviously pulled in through Christina. She kind of has a relationship with Christina too, and I think that's the interesting thing of Metamorphosis. Like, they had this she had this relationship with William, which is just the skin of Christina. Does she still feel that same way?
Wait, Ruby or Christina?
Ruby and Christina. I mean, both of them, right? Like, in terms of the metamorphosis idea, we're talking about, like, sexuality, and in terms of
That's actually a great point.
Yeah.
And I wonder, biologically speaking, like, when your skin changes, like, do your desires and your biology would change, right? Would your hormones be different? So perhaps the William skin's attracted to Ruby, but maybe the Christina skin isn't. See what the limitations are here,
yeah,
or is it all just in your head?
right? Well, that's the age old question. That's the
It's a great question to play
that's
with.
that's the question people play with in terms of arguing if any of that's about that type of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because obviously then you have Montrose, who has his own issues, as we kind of found out last episode with Tree making the reference to Tick, with
Actually, what's really
hanging
funny?
out with,
I don't think Montrose has a single line in the episode. Well, he has, except at the very beginning. He says, like, a couple things to Tick,
that's
but I don't
true.
think he says
Yeah.
another line afterward.
You're correct.
It's all.
So Michael K. Williams did all his acting just through facial expressions and
movement.
under prosthetics too.
Yeah.
Of the eye, and he wasn't featured a ton in the episode, but he
Impactful.
very impactful scenes that were done there. So
Incredible actor.
I think Ruby's transformation was all about the physical and the emotional and mental and everything. I think she went through a lot, and it was almost like a solo character episode. And now that she's in this world, I'm interested to see how she's changed, because especially in her earlier, appearances, you saw, like, she obviously works really hard. She has, like, the resume she brings in is her actual resume, right? Like, she has all these courses, was never accepted, and then when she's white, she's like, wow, you become assistant manager, right? Even though it's the same resume.
Yeah.
And I think she tried out that skin because she felt like the skin color was holding her back.
Of course.
But now, living in that skin, she doesn't want to be that. She wants to be Ruby. She doesn't want to be anything else.
I love Ruby's I love Ruby's line about how she says like I'm just tired of getting interrupted.
Yes.
I love that. She's like she's maybe of all the characters in the show is the most driven.
Yeah.
She has like a clear single goal, and she's all about that, driving toward that. You know, she's like stepped on some people along the way, you know, or not stepped on them, but like she doesn't mind whose feathers she ruffles.
Right.
And so I just love that's like such a great line for that character. Like I'm tired of getting interrupted.
Right. Ruby
Stop interrupting me.
Yeah.
Ruby interrupted. So
Yeah.
wonderful.
It's going to be. I'm really interested to see what they do with her character and like where she goes next.
Yeah. She
Especially-
might be my favorite character.
especially and how is she going to like interact with our main characters like with Tick and Letty and Montrose and all of them,
Yeah.
you know.
Because they're all bringing different elements of this magic
Right.
together. Like they all know and do different things. So it's really setting up to be, I think, an Infinity War Endgame scenario. They all come in and they'll all be like, I have the power of metamorphosis. I have the power of spells.
Well, what's interesting to me is we assumed that Christina / William was getting close to Ruby to get into the
Yeah.
Winthrop house.
That's right.
But it doesn't, at least from this episode, since Letty and Ruby had their falling out, it doesn't appear that Ruby is staying at that house anymore. It seems that she moved out.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to see what Christina's end game is with Ruby. Is it to get towards Letty and Tick, or is there something else there? I'm curious.
Or maybe she actually does have feelings or has developed a connection with the character.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, lots of interesting questions. And you know what? HBO does a great job, so you'd have to assume it's probably shades of gray, a little bit of all of it, all of the above.
Right.
You know,
And the big mystery that Ruby kept asking in the episode is what's in the basement? What's in the basement of Christina's house?
That's a good
Something
question.
that Kat's brought up multiple times, but it's never answered.
Yeah.
Which is, you know,
So it's obvious.
one of the many mysteries in this.
I think it's
show.
obvious. It's a magical laboratory.
It's all the William skins.
Oh God.
No, it gave me kind of Get Out vibes though, with the basement and the.
Actually, so yeah, we should talk about that actually real quick. One unique feature of this show is that every episode has felt a little bit different.
yes.
So last week we got the Indiana Jones. The first episode was, like pick some show or movie about racism, and that was about that. You know, this episode was very much like gore horror. You know, but like actually, Get Out. Get Out is a perfect
It's kind of
a gory Get Out because Get Out is all about
Identity,
inhabiting
Yeah.
white people inhabiting these other bodies, right? So very interesting.
White people inhabiting black bodies.
Yeah.
This is black people inhabiting white bodies.
Right.
Well,
Do you think they
somewhat.
took anything from Get Out for this, or
I mean, I would imagine. I mean, Jordan Peele is an EP on the show.
Him,
so-
along with every other producer in Hollywood. Like, isn't J.J. Abrams? There's like a million. I think Brad Pitt might be. I don't know.
on this show. No, it's on this show.
Yeah.
it's JJ and Jordan Peele is the two big.
why did you think
Oh.
Brad Pitt was the producer on this?
He
Oh,
produces
so
other stuff.
Brad Pitt, I produced something else then that was either on Netflix or HBO.
He did
recently.
Lower Decks. No, I'm kidding. That's misinformation. Yeah, so what's in the basement? I think that's going to be the big one. I thought for the basement, it was just strictly a place to go and do metamorphosis.
I thought that maybe too, but I think there's more to that.
Yeah.
mystery.
No, because Ruby keeps asking about it. So if the reveal was, oh, I just go there to change skins, that would be like such a letdown. You'd be like, well, what was the point then of asking that question multiple times? Like,
Yeah.
what's the point of even
Well,
hiding
I think
answer?
that was already been answered because, like, when William enters the house, he's clearly on his way to the basement.
Yeah, but it's gonna be more than just changing skins. And also, why would he need to go to the basement to do like it? That's stupid. Like, go to
do
the
you see
bathroom.
how messy this process is?
Well, here's
you
my
probably
question.
want a dedicated space.
Here's
Yeah,
my
that's
question.
stupid.
Here's my question: does the skin like dissolve over time, or does it just stay there?
I hope not. I hope it stays there.
Because if that's true, you know, and she like transformed in the basement of the department store, been in that alleyway,
Yeah.
like wouldn't that become a news story of just like pounds of flesh appear in alleyway?
Yeah, the fact that we haven't seen any news reports or newspaper articles or police investigating of the sudden mysterious appearance of pounds of flesh just lying all over the city, probably means that it disappears.
That's what I would assume.
Yeah.
I thought because they had a shot where it stayed on a piece of skin, so I thought it was gonna just like disappear.
Yeah.
How
Probably takes
disgusting was it too when Ruby was like had shedded and she still had like a piece
Yeah.
of the face on her
blood, flesh, marrow,
Yeah.
like God knows what else. Like gross AF, but
Yeah.
incredibly effective.
Yeah, shout out to the actress Wunmi Mosaka for enduring what must have been disgusting amounts of stuff
Oh,
on
yeah.
you.
It helps though.
Yeah, I mean it helps you get into the thing.
The more realistic the
Yeah,
props are,
of course.
the easier it is to act. It's completely true.
That's why all the MCU movies suck because it's all just a blue screen and they're just wearing like foam.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh my
I am
God.
Iron Man. No, I actually feel like a kid at Halloween.
I'm 3 years old.
Yeah,
They should get kids to be in those movies. I swear they'd be better.
yeah. They have stronger imaginations.
It's true.
So Letty and Tick. Obviously, we saw that Tick kind of went nutso when he clearly learned of
Yahima?
Yahima's death, and Letty didn't realize it.
So you know what's interesting because there were visual signs in the room. You could see the blood on his hands. When they showed a shot of them coming in where the seat was, you could still see some red on the floor, right? And I think Tick is observant enough and knows enough about his dad to know that he killed her and
Yeah.
got rid of the body,
Yeah.
which is obviously why he had that reaction. And I think part of it's also PTSD from the war.
Also, his dad beat him.
You're right.
So
exactly.
I mean, it's almost like a lot of pent up.
A lot of pent up feelings, and Montrose doesn't fight back. Montrose just takes it.
Yeah.
In my mind, especially with Montrose's journey in the episode, he did that to protect his family, but he's willing to die at that point because he doesn't fight back. Tick is going to kill him. If Letty did not step in, Montrose would be dead, right? And he does nothing to fight back. And then I think what you see later with him coming to terms with his, a little bit of his sexuality, kissing Sammy on the lips, it's because I think Montrose has basically lost everything at that point. He
can finally be who he.
Right, because he has nothing to potentially
Wants
to
to be.
lose. He
Yeah.
feels like the relationship with his son is probably over.
Yeah.
Everything with the magical wizards is
It's gonna be a better term for
is
these
over
guys.
because he's burnt the book. He's killed the girl. He got rid of those pages. So he's like, that's done. Like I've done what I can.
He doesn't know his son very well. It's never done.
Right.
It's not over till I
Because
say
his
so.
son is going to continue searching for whatever this
Hey,
is.
actually, we got to talk about that real quick because his son, obviously, Tick is deciphering the symbols.
Yes.
We need to talk about that because I got a little lost here.
Yes.
First of all,
like the show Lost.
yes, the ring.
Yes.
Where did that ring come from?
The ring was the one Christina put on Tick's hand before they did the ceremony in episode 2.
Thank
and that's
you.
what
Okay.
saved him and caused everybody to
Rift.
die
Yeah.
and kill everyone, essentially.
And near the beginning of the episode, or middle of the episode, he's like deciphering it, and he thinks it's the initials to his name.
Yeah.
Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
But it actually spells the word die.
Yes.
Yes.
So what? He got the translation wrong, or he just didn't figure it out, or like how did he fuck up that bad?
Well, I don't know. I'm not entirely sure on how he's deciphering it.
Yeah,
but
and how is he?
clearly,
What's the cipher?
I think it's the pages that they got from the boat.
Is it the photographs of the
Yeah,
pages?
the
'Cause
photographs.
The pages are destroyed, right?
Right, and Letty took photographs. Of
Yeah.
it. She had developed the film. But whatever it is, it's scary enough for him to call the woman from the war, whose name is Gia, I think. Gia?
Or Gia.
Yeah.
But what? Okay, and this woman, obviously, this is the woman he called at the end of episode 2, or
episode
episode
1
one?
or 2, yeah.
1 or 2. This is the woman he called.
Yes.
Who is this woman? Is this the woman in the flashback that was trying to kill him and that he killed? Obviously, it can't be.
I think it's the one that was in episode 2, the one that
In the flashback?
it wasn't a flashback, it was the
illusion.
illusion, right? I
Yeah.
think that's the same woman.
Okay.
I saw the preview for next week, and it's gonna focus. It's a prequel episode that's focusing
Oh.
all on
The war.
the war
Sure.
and his time with this woman.
Okay. All right. So
we're gonna get a lot. We're gonna
answer
get a
that
lot more
question.
answers to that.
Perfect.
But there's certainly something that she knows.
Yeah. Okay.
Um,
Dope.
So I guess we'll see what happens there.
Okay, thanks. Because that stuff, the stuff with Tick and Letty, and they're like they're very much like the archaeologists of this group. Like they're finding artifacts, deciphering artifacts. They're finding undead, ancient people who have been mummified and then come back to life. Like clearly that's their role, and so it gets a little confusing about what they've found, where they are in their quests. And so it's good to recap that stuff. I forget what I was going to say now. That's great. That's great.
One character we didn't see at all this episode who had a cliffhanger in the last episode was Aunt Hippolyta.
Yes.
Remember, she discovers Uncle George's cipher on the map, and we assume
she's on her way to
the rubble where
Devon?
Uncle George died.
The town of
The house potentially.
Yeah.
The house where everything happened. And I would assume from previews from next week's episode, we won't get any answers to that either. So, bit of a cliffhanger there in terms of what's happening with Aunt Hippolyta
and the daughter,
their daughter,
the comic book artist.
Right.
We need more comic books.
And we know that she has the planetarium thing, correct?
She has the it's the O, it begins with an O.
The O. She has the O.
The O, yes.
But that golden thing with the planet.
She has the tool that Christina's looking for.
Right.
Correct.
And now she's going back to the origins of the house. And
Correct. But I don't think she has it with her.
I mean, why would you carry that around,
Yeah.
essentially?
Yeah. So lots of questions, lots of mysteries on the show. I guess with Montrose, what did you guys think of the reveal that he is in a relationship with Sammy? We know it was teased last week with Tree.
Tree.
I didn't think it would be confirmed so quickly. And it was interesting, and I thought it was interesting. And as you pointed out, Krishna, though, he didn't say anything at all through the episode.
That was my favorite part of it.
And so we kind of see this character. Were you surprised it came so quickly? What do you think of their relationship? And how is it going to play out? Especially now we know that Tick is still obviously in deep on this, and we know Montrose is going to come back some way. But how is it going to affect his relationship with Sammy? Is Sammy now going to be pulled into this world as well?
Yeah, those are great questions. I loved how it was done because Montrose is just watching this stuff happen, and then through his actions, you can see him just accepting it, right, coming to terms with it. So I loved how it was done. Nothing about it was surprising. I think this feels like a natural place to put it in, like you said, because he just got almost beat half to death by his son. What better time, I guess, to really figure out who you are than that, right? So you might as well. So I don't know how it's going to play out.
I think it's going to end up. It's probably going to end poorly, isn't it? Because think about it, right? So this, Montrose finally accepts who he is. Has someone who loves him. He loves that person.
His arc is over.
No. What I mean by that is
God,
I think I think what's going to happen is ultimately is him having to protect the family is going to get in the way of his relationship, or put that relationship in jeopardy, or put Sammy in jeopardy or in harm's way. I think that's what's going to happen, because it seems like we need drama. So.
we need it.
We need it. This show needs more.
It needs
more drama.
Yeah.
Do we think, though, it leads to, obviously Uncle George with the reference that maybe you're not the dad of Tick? Does this make Tick question his parentage a little bit more?
Yeah.
If and when he finds out.
Oh, absolutely. I think, it's going to make him question it. I think he's also going to look back at the beatings he took at his dad's hands. I don't know if Tick is going to accept the reason, perhaps some of that anger was misplaced onto him or displaced onto him, but it might explain it a little bit, right? So we'll see. It's either going to drive them further apart or bring them closer together, but it's clearly not going to stay the same, right? You don't have an element like that revealed in the show and expect that relationship to stay the same. It's going to do something. Maybe we'll do this and then this. So, yeah, we'll see. Well, I'm very curious to see what happens here. Very curious.
Krishna,
Yes.
was Lovecraft Country episode 5 good?
Not only was it good, it was the best episode of the season. This episode was a metamorphosis.
You know he says
the
that
direction.
every week, right?
That's
Okay,
not true.
That's true.
Because I didn't like episode 2. So to me, the show went, ew.
But you still said it was good.
Yeah, it was good, but it's been my least favorite episode so far. Episode 2 was my least favorite.
Well, you're my least favorite episode.
You're my least favorite brother.
Wow.
Whoa.
Damn.
Revelations today.
How's that for character development?
That's intense.
That's some revelations there.
I just have to leave. It's just too emotional for me right now.
Good. I'm glad. Arjuna, was Lovecraft Country, episode 5, good?
Yes, it was. My favorite show on TV right now. I wait in anticipation every Sunday for the show, and I'm sad we're halfway through the show, honestly.
Yeah.
But it's been a ride, and I can't wait to see where it goes. Ravi, was Lovecraft Country season 1, episode 5 good?
Duh. Yes.
God. Why was it good, though?
It just was. It was a combination of gore, shock value, and character development.
Wow.
Wait, you hate character development?
Yeah, I know.
Like you literally are like character development is as bad as this fake CGI. We got to find a movie with just the worst CGI and all character development.
Sky Captain in the World Tomorrow.
I mean,
There's no character development in that movie.
Yes, there is.
I don't remember it at all.
the
It's
movie's like
that
all talking. I feel
bad.
like.
I don't. I
It's just a
don't remember
talkie.
Speaking of a show whose character development has only gotten better,
it.
Star Trek Lower Decks.
Yes,
We got episode 6. It was a good episode. It was an interesting episode where the Ensign Core group and the Lower Decks were mimicking and saying, we Lower Decks stick together, and that's a very Federation, that's a very Star Trek philosophy. We stick together because we're doing it for the great of everyone.
Yeah.
And in this situation, it backfired
Yes, it did.
all over them.
Yes.
And potentially created some bad robots and AIs that are just going to run around
Yeah,
and destroy the universe.
I was thinking that several times. I'm like, both of these elements are gonna come back. So obviously the holodeck AI.
Yes.
That's first of all, great character.
Badgy.
Looks
Well,
like
so you-
looks like a badge.
You know it's a play on, right?
No.
You remember the old Office products, like Office 97, 98? There was Clippy.
Oh yeah.
And Clippy would be like, hey, I see you're trying to do this. You want some help with this? And it was like an
you're so
assistant.
right. Microsoft Office.
Yeah, exactly. So Badgy is a play on Microsoft Office's Clippy.
Oh my God, incredible. That's amazing. So that, and then also was it a warp core? Was it a warp core?
No, it was
Engine core?
It was
a core.
It was a core of some type.
Yeah.
That fused with the mind
Shield
of
core.
fused with the mind of an ensign.
Yeah.
A dumb ensign.
Became like this AI thing, and I almost feel like Ravi might understand this reference. There's something in Discovery called Control,
Yes.
and it's like this AI intelligence that's a great threat in the future. And to me, wouldn't it be hilarious if this was like the origin of Control, like this super dark evil threat in Discovery season 2 is like actually this like comedically stupid thing in Lower Decks.
Man. That gets smarter.
That gets smarter, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Or like
it
evolves.
makes sense. But the problem is, like, while that kind of makes sense to a degree,
Yeah.
the Trekkies they would never accept it.
Actually, should though. It's hilarious.
That leads me actually to I think maybe the most important question around this show. Events that happen in the show and elements and characters, are they going to affect the Star Trek universe?
No, and they don't.
So it's a separate thing,
Right, because
it's a beta universe.
Well, it's
has
not-
nothing to do with the prime.
No.
or the
no,
alpha
it's
or
no,
the
it's not true.
omega,
it's in.
sigma,
You have to remember the thing with these gigantic
gamma,
like cinematic universes is that they create is
zeta.
they are these big universes, right?
Yes.
And just because, I mean, look at it in the real world, right? We're here in Los Angeles doing our own thing, right?
Uh-huh.
There could be somebody on the other side of the planet in Australia doing the exact same podcast, talking about similar things. We don't know of each other's existence.
Sure.
There are common events like COVID
Yeah.
that affect both sides, and we're part of the same thing. It's the same idea, I think, within Lower Decks and the Star Trek universes there are big common things that happen that all of the Federation know about. We know that the Borg attacked. We know that Jean-Luc Picard was taken by the Borg because they're like their big headline news pieces. I don't think that everything has to connect.
No,
But I do think from this episode,
The control.
well, let's call it the beta pseudo control AI thing is something that could affect the greater Star Trek universe. In the first 5 episodes, I would say that event is pretty big. But to Ravi's point, everything else that's happened, like
Absolutely.
the Cerritos is basically like
A
a
loser.
D-lister
Yeah.
starship, right? They go in to like clean up shit. They're like the second contact
Yeah.
team and all this type of stuff. So they're not doing anything that's going to move the needle. But having said that, I do think there are going to be events peppered in that are going to affect the greater universe.
So
for
here's
sure.
here's why I think this question is relevant, because over the course of the season of any television show, you need tension and action and climactic events to rise. Otherwise, the season doesn't work.
Sure.
Right? You need and you got to end the season on a season finale.
Right.
The season finale needs to be kind of a big event. So if we're starting now to and obviously this is only one episode, but if we're starting now to see potential, and that's all it is, right? And like Ravi said, easy to wipe your hands, throw it away. It's a big universe. These things can't come back and affect the larger universe. But this is what episode is this? 6? And when, it's episode 6, and in my opinion, and I could be wrong, but things, especially in a show like this, tension has to rise. The stakes have to get higher. Otherwise, what's the point of even having a story?
Right.
Are you excited by that prospect that events in this show could potentially affect the greater universe? How pissed off are fans going to get that a show that's so tonally different than the rest of the Star Trek universe is going to have a bearing on that universe? And do you like that idea or do you dislike that idea?
I like the idea because I've always felt, of all the connected universes, I've actually always felt like Star Trek does it the best because it's the most streamlined, right? The MCU has superheroes, but like they're superheroes who are mutants and have magic, and like tonally those things don't always mesh together, right? So it's really hard to like encapsulate, and there's thousands of superheroes and they're like all saving the world and they all have earth saving ability, you know what I mean? Like it becomes really hard. Star Trek, like Star Wars and like a lot of sci-fis, it has space to play with, right? So it's infinitely large. But Star Trek's always focused on the Federation, which is like the space police, essentially.
The United Nations.
And starships, right? And I think what they've done that's smart, especially with all of our shows, is that they don't always take place at the same time or right next to each other, right? So for 3 shows that were really close together were obviously Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager. Next Generation was a typical starship show where they were on a starship and they were exploring the universe. Then they started Deep Space Nine at the same time. So instead of them also traveling around space, they had them stationary on a station, and they had a plot that was local to that station, including a war and events and stuff that was going on in that quadrant, right?
Yeah.
Then you had Voyager, which, another starship, but instead of them being around the Federation, they go all the way to this other quadrant that's unexplored, and they are on an island by themselves.
Right.
Then you had Enterprise, which was all the way back, all the way before all of that stuff, and they're the first starship. Then you have Discovery, which is like after the original series, but then now they're, with a different ship, and now they're far, far into the future, away from everything else. Then you have like Picard, so it's not all like next to each other and
affect the
congested, right?
continuity.
Like the MCU, for example, right? Like things are like within weeks and months of each other, right? Where it's all super close and it's all on the same planet versus Star Trek. And I just feel like they do a good job of, they have this stuff, it's all together, but it's still separate, but it all influences each other. And they do a good job of, like Ravi said, referencing those headlines or those big events that really do affect everyone. Borg,
Right.
This war, this event, this starship goes missing, right? I
guess-
think, like when Voyager goes missing, it's mentioned in a Deep Space Nine episode that this starship is missing from the Federation.
My question though is, I understand conventionally, and within the actual plot of what is Star Trek, that makes perfect sense, right? But what about the idea, though, that you're taking a show that some might consider sort of the joke of the Star Trek universe, right?
Yeah.
It's this comic comedic thing. I mean, at least I look at this as like a side thing from Star Trek. I look at it as separate because I don't need to know Star Trek to get it. It's funny. It's not like Star Trek, traditional Star Trek, and that's why I like it. So some people might be looking at it like that, like I
Sure.
do. So how would those people feel who are diehard Trekkies and maybe, I don't know if you guys can actually answer this. How is the Star Trek community receiving this show?
They like it so far. I mean, the other big thing is, to Arjuna's point, no Star Trek series influences the other Star Trek series to the point where life changes drastically.
Gotcha.
Right? So Arjuna's joke of this like thing being control, I don't like if that happens, cool, then we have an origin for it and that's it.
Yeah.
It doesn't affect or change what we've already seen in Discovery or what we will see. And Star Trek series have never ever, especially when like in the 90s when we had the crossovers of like Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, and then Voyager, like none of those had any kind of big drastic impacts. Like Worf sure went from Next Generation to Deep Space Nine,
Right.
and then reappeared in, oh my god, what was it?
Voyager?
First Contact. But like beyond that, that's really it. Like a character jumping around, but there's never been like any kind of drastic major changes. Like
Sure.
we may get a more updated Star Trek series that takes place after this, and it's more of the traditional like within the same realm of like Voyager, Next Generation, and Deep Space Nine.
Star Trek Lower Decks adjacent.
Right, but it wouldn't be another Lower Decks. It would
Yeah.
be like a proper. It could be very well the next Generation. And it's the Enterprise F crew,
Sure.
whatever.
So like for example, this show takes place between Voyager and Picard, right?
Sure.
This is like 10 years before Picard, but like 2 years after the end of Voyager.
Gotcha.
So right, there are events, that there is a live action show that takes place after this show, essentially, right?
Right.
And are those shows going to cross over in any way? No.
Or
They're not-
influence each other.
Right. No, because they're totally different. They're talking about completely different things. There might be. I think what Lower Decks has proven is that they can they can reference anything that's going on in Star Trek in a joking manner, and
Yeah.
maybe they reference like Jean-Luc Picard and what he was up to 10 years before Picard, but it's a throwaway. It's not going to be like, and this is going to drive our entire plot,
Right.
and vice versa. Like, I don't think they're going to blow up Vulcan in, Lower Decks.
Unless they undo it. Like it
Maybe.
would be a gag. It would be a joke. right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like they'll blow it up and then they figure out how to go back in time, make sure it never happened.
right.
Which
Right.
is great. Yeah, I'm just very curious because the show is so different than the rest of Star Trek, tonally that is. So I'm just curious to see how it's being received by the Trekkies, and if there are any plans to integrating it more than it already is. But it sounds like that's not even a question really because you don't need to do that.
There is another animated show coming out, which is more it's more of a traditional children's show. It's going to be coming out on Nickelodeon
Oh God.
for Star Trek.
Are you guys to be checking that out?
Probably not.
No, because it's made for children.
Yeah.
And I'm not a child.
So Arjuna
Sure.
will be tuning in
Dude,
first
you
week.
watched SpongeBob. I've seen you.
I watched the original SpongeBob from 1999 to 2002.
Yeah.
The first 3 seasons, the golden years of SpongeBob.
Yeah, this could be the golden years of Star Trek. How are you gonna know unless you check it
Because
out?
I was a child when those first 3 seasons of SpongeBob.
Then
came
why
out.
are
You're
you
a child
rewatching
now.
them?
Because it was made for when I was a child, and I still like them.
Yeah, I don't.
Anyway.
And it's also there's adult humor in there too.
Yeah,
Like in
what
those
if this
first
show
3
has
seasons.
adult humor in it?
I think this is strictly like a
We'll
Nick
see.
Jr. show.
I mean, SpongeBob was a Nick Jr. show.
No, it wasn't.
What was it then?
It was just a regular Nickelodeon show.
So
It was never a Nick Jr. show.
Nick Jr.'s just for me.
Anywho, I think we can all agree that this episode of Star Trek Lower Decks was good.
It was good.
It was. I think it was the funniest episode too.
It was
I-
a great episode.
I was definitely laughing a lot.
I laughed.
I like
more,
Badgie.
I love more each week than I laughed the previous week.
That's good.
That was great English, by the way.
That is good.
Thank you.
Badgie was voiced by if you guys ever watched 30 Rock, the Kenneth.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I
it
actually know
was,
who that is, though.
was in the episode.
Badgie by far is the best, and I do hope we see Badgie again.
We have to, like, it would be
no, real quick. If this show wants to like put its mark in the Star Trek universe, and like when they come up with the next generation, and it's the crew of the Starship Enterprise, like F crew, if Badgie appears, I'm all for that.
Oh God. Badgie seems like a local entity to the Cerritos, but yeah,
Probably right.
Do you guys think we'll ever get a live action versions of our main characters?
No. And I think that's fine. Just keep it where it is.
I kind of hope not.
People said the same thing about Ahsoka Tano.
Yeah, sure, but
I haven't seen any live action
the
versions,
Star Wars
so I don't know what you're
fans are
talking about.
crazy.
Give it a month.
All right, I'll give it a month. Moving into Was It News, and actually speaking on the Star Wars front here.
Oh God!
Recently,
Oh, no. Here we go.
A particular actress from the new Star Wars sequels, Daisy Ridley, gave us a little bit of an insight into her character Rey's parentage and lineage, whatever the words are, and what do we think? Like,
First of all,
do we know what? Like, do we all know what she said? And
Yeah.
who'd like to bring that up?
Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm going to attempt to take a stab at what she said here because I saw it briefly. She basically said, in a nutshell, what we've kind of have known about the new Star Wars trilogy from the beginning, that her parentage changed from movie to movie, and that even after wrapping up filming, she still didn't really know who her parents were. In fact, there was. She thought either early on in the process or in the middle of the process that her parent was going to be Obi-Wan. That she was going to be an a Kenobi. So
how I deciphered it was in the pre-production and production of The Force Awakens.
Okay,
Star
which is the
Wars
first one.
Episode 7.
Yeah.
She was told by JJ and company at that point, you're a Kenobi.
Which explains everything you hear in Force Awakens.
Right. Yeah, explains a lot, right? It explains why she's British. It explains
It explains why she hears Obi-Wan's voice in her flashbacks.
Correct, right. It explains right. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And the Kenobi is obviously inherently intertwined with Skywalker. Being the master of both Skywalkers. Then in episode 8, it obviously changed with Rian Johnson that you're a nobody. So I was like, okay, cool.
And she actually thought that. She was like, okay, it's cool. So we're going with that line.
I'm a nobody.
Yeah, we're going
okay,
that
cool.
way.
Then when JJ came back, she's like, am I a Kenobi again? Am I nobody? and he's
Poor
like,
Daisy.
no, but your granddaddy is Palpatine. And she's like, oh, cool. And then like, I guess near the end of filming, he's like, well, they might not like that, so maybe we're gonna just shoot it and cover it just in case. But like, if it doesn't work out that way, we'll see. I'll let you know on the final cut, essentially.
So my problem with this whole thing is not that the sequels once again prove that they just don't know what there was no plan. There was no plan, which is fine, whatever. I guess my thing is like
It's the lies.
it's not that. It's like
not lies. I just
we look
didn't
at
know.
Star Wars, we look at these films, and we want to be transported to this universe. We want to believe, right? You go to
Yeah.
the movie because you want a sense of disbelief, right?
You want to escape
You want to escape.
into a world.
The problem is, when you have a script or a trilogy or whatever, and you give it to an actor, a lot of these actors and actresses, they want to know all the details, the backstory, because it helps them become that character.
Right.
When you take someone like Daisy Ridley, John Boyega, etc., and you kind of, put them down this path, then this path, and this path, and they flip-flop, they don't become that character because they don't
Or
know.
it becomes infinitely harder.
It becomes insanely harder. Like, think of you show up. Like, think of it like you go to your job, like a regular job, and your boss tells you today, your job is to mop the floors. That's your job, and it's just gonna be your job for the next X amount of time, forever. Be really, really good at it. But then you come in one day and they say, you know what? Actually, no, you're now an account executive. It's like I know it's not like the perfect analogy, but it's like you're flip flopping so hardcore that, of course, when we go and we watch this film, we pick up on these weird inconsistencies where Daisy Ridley is really, really into the character, and you're like, yeah, I believe it. And then there's other parts where it's like you just shot that once and said, fuck it.
Well, here's the issue. They tried too much to be like the original trilogy. they tried to mimic George Lucas's madness, where he was changing his story, on the day of the set. There's two issues they forgot.
Yeah.
One, there wasn't one singular voice who kept changing their minds. It was many voices, right?
Yeah.
It was JJ, and then Ryan Johnson, and then JJ, and then Kathleen Kennedy trying to be the overarching thing, but still giving powers to her directors. All changing their minds throughout this whole process. And two, when Star Wars was originally being shot, it wasn't a global phenomenon, right?
Yeah.
It was just some random space wizard story that came out. So people weren't, closely watching for the continuity of like, oh, wait a second. They said, Princess Leia had a British accent in this one scene, and now she doesn't have one.
Yeah.
What's going
What
on?
does that
right?
mean? What does it mean?
People didn't care back then because it was a visually impressive movie.
Yep.
Like movies weren't like necessarily brand new, but it was still like a relatively new, like mass audience type of experience. They messed it up on so many levels, and I just hate what I hate is J.J. Abrams and Kathleen Kennedy and everyone at Disney coming out and being like, "Yep, this was the plan all along." Just be honest and be like, "We didn't know what we were doing. We tried to make it work. This is what we had. Enjoy it or not. We still made the money. Go fuck yourself." What you say?
I would respect that.
The brutal honesty.
I'd be like, if
Go fuck
if
yourself.
JJ came out, like held a press conference,
Yeah.
and start off with that, and then just pulled out wads of cash and
Yeah.
just like, listen, I'm rich now, bitches. Go fuck yourselves.
Yeah.
I'm out.
But
JJ out.
instead of being like, yeah, we had this master plan, and like I wasn't supposed to come back for episode 9, but it was all part of the plan. No, it wasn't. It wasn't part of the plan.
Yeah.
This was just stop trying to pretend it was something that it wasn't, and just be like, yep, this is what we did. If you like it, great. If you don't, whatever. We'll live.
It's and I think, and honestly, this has started since episode 1. Is that the creators of Star Wars have let themselves be influenced too much by the fans, where they let their vision just sort of go the direction of this fans of like, we like this, don't do this, and so the creators of this, like George Lucas did it episode 1, episode 2, obviously. I'm still always going to believe in Darth Jar Jar. That was going to be a thing, and they took the backlash to Ryan Johnson's vision. They completely decided that the fans didn't like this, so we gotta pivot back to what they liked in Force Awakens and then try and get back to that. And that's why you have the most disjointed trilogy maybe in movie history. So, at least that's definitely a huge element. I don't know if that's the whole reason, but I think that's a big reason. And like you said, because once it became a global phenomenon with all the eyes on it and the rise of the internet and Twitch and Twitter and YouTube and us and podcasts, and articles and blogs and vlogs, just dissecting every little thing, breaking it down, and then influencing the lore. Reddit's the reason. Reddit destroyed Star Wars.
No, social media destroyed it.
Yeah, Reddit.
Speaking on things that they clearly don't have a plan for, still within, guess what, the Star Wars space.
Wait.
Obi-Wan Kenobi series. So more recently, a couple days ago, Ian McGregor came out and said that there was only going to be one season of the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. Kathleen Kennedy also said something similar about a month ago. And as of right now, taping of this podcast, it's supposedly going to be shot in spring of 2021.
Yeah.
The Obi-Wan Kenobi series has been spoken about more than I think anything else in Star Wars history.
I mean, the idea for an Obi-Wan movie has been around since I think they were shooting episode 3. From what I've heard and read, him and George had a conversation about like, what does Obi-Wan do in that in-between time, and everything.
Play cards.
So it's interesting because obviously this, it makes sense that the show would be one season too because there's a limited amount of time and real estate essentially you have before he shows up in episode 4 and after you see him in episode 3. And this movie already has a time jump. It's set to take place 8 years after Revenge of the Sith, right? So it's limited time. He also murders Darth Maul.
It's not murder. Murder means that you have
Self-defense.
Murder is you're going with the intent to end someone's life.
He went with the intent to end his life.
No, he defended himself.
Yeah, but in that battle, he knew someone was going to live and die, so he intended to kill Darth Maul.
I don't know about that.
He murdered him.
That's harsh.
He straight up murdered
He's
him.
he's a Jedi. Jedi don't murder.
He doesn't
Just look at the entire Clone Wars series. Not once did they intend to murder all of those millions of people.
You mean robots?
Whatever.
Robots are people too. So it makes sense that it's one season. But in this interview he had with E.T., he said, this is the direct quote. As I understand, it's a standalone season. Pause. We'll see. Who knows?
I mean, you know what? Ian McGregor probably said that after reading the interview with Daisy Ridley. He was like, you know what? I don't want to be shot in the foot here. So I'm just going to say, we'll see. And just go with the flow. Because you know what could happen? They'll do the first season. It's like the most... It's more well received than like The Mandalorian. They sell more stuff like than The Mandalorian series. And then sure enough, they're like, we're doing a season 2.
Yeah.
So
That's exactly what's going to happen.
probably.
I think the only... So here's what I'm thinking. The only way they do more Obi-Wan stuff is if they make it an anthology series, and a season 2 would be like between episodes 2 and 3, or 1 and 2, or pre-episode 1. Like, so this takes place after, but then like each season, if they want to do another season, because my thinking is this is going to bridge the entire gap, essentially. You're going to see from this point to right up probably to episode 4. But if you want to do more with him, you still have the in-betweens for the prequel trilogy. I mean, not really between episodes 2 and 3, as that's pretty well covered in Clone Wars. But you could definitely do some stuff with him training Anakin between 1 and 2, like Ian McGregor.
There's like 12 years
Yeah, but
between 1 and 2.
But so there's a lot there.
Yeah.
That's like that's 10 seasons.
And Ian McGregor,
of
honestly, Ian McGregor hasn't aged that much. So like I think you could use prosthetics and CGI makeup and whatever to make him look a little bit like younger if you needed to. Or you could you could recast if you want to do pre-episode 1, like him being trained by Qui-Gon could be really interesting.
And then Ian McGregor play Qui-Gon. That would really confuse people.
No, you got to bring back Liam Neeson.
No.
Yeah.
He's aged quite a bit.
It doesn't matter. It will be
Quite a bit.
he was wearing a wig the first time. He can wear a wig again.
That's true. Yeah, all that sounds nice. I hope it's just one season of Obi-Wan, to be honest. Like you said, we got a ton of Obi-Wan in Clone Wars and Clone Wars. So if you want your Obi-Wan fix, go watch that show.
That's true.
I think one season of live action Ewan McGregor Obi-Wan is really all we need. Ravi said it a few times now. I'd like to explore some like different stuff. Let's go Old Republic. Let's go real zany. Let's go 1,000 years in the future. Right, where the Force doesn't even exist anymore, and it's a family drama about them trying to survive on an asteroid floating around Tatooine. It's random shit like that. That'll never happen.
They
but,
have to create another desert planet.
How many desert planets do we have now?
Bakuin.
Yes.
It's a combination of Jakku and Tatooine.
Bakuin.
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 Back away. Yeah.
Speaking, so moving into other, news things here. One thing that I think Christian and I are really excited about, Arjuna is probably going to get upset. The Walking Dead. It's finally ending?
Oh my God.
Arjuna, how do you feel?
Wait, is this
your
real?
favorite show.
Well,
of all
I just
time.
put it in because Ravi and I had a long-standing bet that The Walking Dead would not make it to 10 seasons. It made it past 10 seasons, and it's going to make it to its 11th and then end.
Wow.
So Ravi lost the bet by a season.
No,
Wow.
Well, two. I guess two
seasons technically.
Yes. So The Walking Dead is ending. However, they still have to air the season finale of this season 10. They also have an additional 8 episodes they're airing of season 10, which doesn't make sense to me. Like, you're going to air your season finale and then additional episodes of the same season. A little confusing to me. And then they're doing like a super packed, like I think 25 or 30 episode season 11.
Holy shit.
And ending it. And then they also announced they're doing 2 more spin-offs outside of The Walking Dead. They're going to do a spin-off focused on the 2 original survivors now, Carol and Daryl, in the spin-off. And then they're doing a anthology Walking Dead type of series, which will have different people in the Walking Dead universe every few episodes.
What about Fear the
essentially.
Walking Dead? Is that still going?
Fear the Walking Dead still going. They have that new 2-season one going with the kids.
Wait, what's that?
It's like it's
Well,
in the
Nick-
future, which is the now.
Walking Dead Jr.?
Yeah.
I
It's a
can't,
Nick Jr.
I can't
show.
even remember what the show is called, but I think I showed you guys the trailer because it came out of Comic-Con, and it was awful. Like, it was...
Let me ask you the most important question around all of this news. Is Chris Hardwick's Talking Dead still a thing?
I have no idea,
Wow, I'm shocked.
honestly.
Because didn't he start as a... Didn't that start as a... like us, like a podcast or something, like a or a stream after every episode discussing it, and it became like a syndicated thing.
No, it was a thing AMC did.
Oh, okay.
We weren't the first.
And Chris Hardwick was chosen as host because he does a lot of nerdy stuff. He started out on G4.
Oh,
As a
okay.
Actually, no,
host.
he started out on MTV.
Yeah, MTV.
With
Wow.
Kristen McCarthy.
What?
I don't know.
Yeah, way back in the
fuck?
day.
But anyway,
He had
congratulations.
a drinking problem.
Congratulations to me for winning $100 from Ravi. Ravi, you still owe me that $100.
It was $100 bet.
Sure.
Pay it.
No.
Do it.
You owe me $100.
Nobody's gonna make bets with you unless you start paying up
That's
for your
fine.
losses.
I shouldn't be betting. Gambling's bad for people. Don't do it.
By the way,
Anyone
real
listening to
quick
this
note-
podcast, at Ravi_Ramgopal on Twitter and harass him until he pays me my $100.
This is actually a good point thing to point out that here on What's It Good, we do like to gamble. Despite what Ravi just said, the Celtics are through onto the Eastern Conference Finals. We are 2 rounds away. If they are able to beat the Heat, the Eastern Conference Finals, and then probably the Lakers in the finals, I will have to get a tattoo along with these 2 fools, and I will also win $700.
8 wins away.
Gambling is good. Do it.
That's all the Celtics need.
8 wins
Boston
away.
Celtics, if you get 8 more wins and you hoist a trophy, Christian Ramgopal here will get a tattoo.
And win $700. That's what I'm more interested in.
We'll see. We'll see what happens there. And then the last bit of news. Well, is it really news? Wonder Woman 1984 has been delayed for what feels like the 10th time.
Yeah.
Now it's been delayed for a Christmas release.
Christmas Day.
Well, that's not going to happen. Why not just push it back to like next Christmas? Like, you know, a time when it's
2022.
going to happen, you know?
Once again, we believe, though, Warner Brothers has not come out just flat out said we're pushing it back because of the subpar money situation of Tenet, have they?
No, but that's the reasoning. Like, if anyone that has half a brain, like, why'd they release Tenet, but not obviously Wonder Woman? Because they realize people don't want to die and go to a movie
that's
theater
shocking.
and see this movie.
I mean,
it makes sense.
It's great. It's great.
We do have one more piece of news, based off of Lovecraft Country's Jonathan Majors. There's a rumor out there that he is joining the MCU. He is potentially going to be cast in the 3rd Ant-Man movie as Kang
The Conqueror.
the Conqueror, who is, drumroll please,
A time traveler?
a time traveler.
Yeah.
Now, more specifically, though,
you know who Kang was, Krishna?
No, I don't know who.
That's
Kang-
because that's why I had a drum roll.
Well, he told me before.
so
damn it.
Kang the Conqueror, his big thing is he's a time traveler from the future
Oh, he's blue.
who goes back in time to specifically eliminate Steve Rogers because Steve Rogers, Captain America, fucks with the timeline.
Nice.
And we know at the end of Avengers Endgame, Steve Rogers fucks with the timeline.
It's not a game theory.
So it's very likely that we were set up essentially to see a Kang the Conqueror. 2 things that stick out right away. Kang the Conqueror, I've always thought is a really interesting villain because he's not anti-hero, he is villain. He's very clear in terms of what he wants to do, which is eliminate so-and-so to fix his timeline so his people, his family, they don't get destroyed, etc. Which is a somewhat noble thing to do, but obviously eliminating others to do it's kind of a dick move. And then also the big one, Jonathan Majors playing, Kang is amazing. I mean, this guy has had probably the best summer that anyone could ask for. He had
the best 2020.
like seriously,
Yeah.
he had Defy Bloods, which is a great, Spike Lee film. He's killing it in Lovecraft Country. He is potentially going to be part of MCU, playing a really badass villain.
And I would theorize that Kang is like the next Thanos. Like, I don't think he's just going to appear in Ant-Man and the Wasp 3.
He's
That
a
would
fucking
be-
time traveler. I
Yeah.
hope not.
Yeah, I would assume this is going to be they're starting to sow the seeds of like the next big bads within the MCU, and I think he might be a contender.
Is there any in comic book lore? Is there any connection between Kang and Krull and Scree and?
Oh yeah, big time.
Oh, boom! So that's perfect then.
Yeah, there's connects all over the place.
Because they're in everything.
The only thing that I ask, I have
Yes.
one thing, because there was another awesome villain and another awesome actor that
didn't work at all.
it didn't work out, not because of the actor, it's because of what they did. A little villain called
Just a little guy.
Apocalypse,
Oh,
played
I've heard of him.
by the great Oscar Isaacs, and Oscar Isaac
Oh.
is a great fucking actor, right? He does creepy villain really, really well. He does like awesome good guy really well. In between, he's a great actor. And for whatever reason, they threw so much fucking prosthetic on the poor man's face. You couldn't even tell it was Oscar Isaac.
They modulated his voice.
And he was just this stiff, disgusting rubber of a man. Wasn't a good villain. So I
mean,
really hope with Kang.
The whole movie was garbage. You can't just it wasn't just that he was the worst part of that movie. The whole movie.
well, no,
was really
I'm
bad.
saying a big part of it was the prosthetic and what they did
okay.
to the
Oh,
character.
you mean just the look of it?
Yeah,
Okay.
just don't with Jonathan Majors, potentially playing Kang. Just don't load him up with prosthetic. Do something similar to what you did with Josh Brolin and Thanos. Use that tech. That's fine. It's acceptable.
Well, the nice thing is,
Just
this
do that.
is Disney, and it's not Fox doing it, because Fox did obviously X-Men, and Disney bought Fox and dissolved most of their production studios, so we're fine in theory, maybe.
They weren't.
They weren't.
Fox breaking. Fox takes over all MCU.
Oy, oy, oy. Before we end, I would just like to shout out friends of the podcast, The Creative Bazaar. Since COVID-19 started, a lot of artists, self-employed artists and creatives have found their businesses hit pretty hard. So thecreativebazaar.com, and Bazaar is Bazaar. Thecreativebazaar.com is a collection of these artists and creatives who have put their heads together and have organized a virtual craft fair that happens to occur right at the start of the holiday shopping season. So if you go to this website, thecreativebazaar.com, on November 7th, guests will be able to see live events of how-to videos of these artists. They'll also be selling their designs, their art, and 10% of those proceeds will go to the Equal Justice Initiative, which is a nonprofit law firm that provides legal representation to those who have been illegally convicted, unfairly sentenced, or abused in state jails and prisons. It's the firm that was in Just Mercy. So 10% of all proceeds go to that. Really cool little thing. CreativeBazaar.com, November 7th. Should check it out. The
Nice.
end.
The end.
The end of my plug.
Wow. Well, that's a good plug.
Was it?
No. And with Christian's poorly delivered plug, we end this podcast.
You bitch.
Thank you for listening. You can find us on Twitter at Was It Good, on Instagram at Was It Good BTM, and on twitch.tv/WasItGood, where most Mondays we live stream this on that Twitch channel, as well as our Food Dude on Fridays. Good day.
Goodbye.